Okay, so yesterday I did 2, but I didn't do 3. So here is 3, Chapter 3 of Patty Reed's Doll, page 27. The title is From Springfield to Independence. Next morning, the lowing of the cattle and the shouts of the men woke the children at sunrise. Eliza, in her calico apron, was already getting breakfast, and the smell of bacon and johnny cake made them hurry to dress and be out in the fresh April daylight. Patty, dear, take your little brothers out and wash their faces. Mrs. Reed was buttoning the little boys' shoes as they wriggled around among the quilts. All right, Mother. Patty tied her apron strings and slipped me out from under her pillow and into her pocket. With the children's faces scrubbed and shining, the wash basins sat on the tailboard of one of the other wagons, and their hair all neatly combed, the family was ready for breakfast. Puss and her father had returned from feeding the horses, and the men from their morning chores. Patty took Grandma's breakfast into her first, and then sat down on a camp stool outside to eat her own. The grass was still wet with dew, and I noticed everyone shivered now and then in the crisp morning air. When the dishes had been washed and packed away, and the patchwork quilt spread neatly over the beds, Patty asked if we could sit up on the box with Milt's for a ways. Her mother gave her permission, and Milt boosted us up over the high front wheels to the seat beside him. From his perch we looked down the line on last-minute preparations. Men were rounding up the cattle, and women were rounding up the children. Grease was being put on the wheel hubs, and oxen were being yoked. The big animals, frisky after their night's rest, tossed their heads and clanked their chains, trying to throw off the heavy yokes. It wasn't long before they were ready, the drivers on their boxes with whips in hand, and women and children in the wagons, and Puss and Mr. Reed at the head of the line on Glaucus and Billy. Catch up! Catch up! The order rang out, and wagons began to roll. Day after day, for almost a month, we plodded down the muddy roads of Illinois, past farmhouses where dogs ran out to bark and people waved at us as we rode by. Cherry and crabapple and wild plum blossoms reminded Grandma of Kentucky Springs, and there were strawberry runners and winding grapevines in the fields where we camped at night. The wagon top stayed white in the blue, rain-washed April air, but underfoot the mud was thick and sticky. Grandma said she felt better every day. A good case of Western fever was just what these old bones needed, she told Patty. What's Western fever, Grandma? I was glad Patty asked because I was wondering, too, how one sickness could help her get well from another one. Well, child, it's a powerful urge to go a-pioneering, that's what it is. And now that I'm doing just that, I am better already. Grandma certainly was as pert as ever. With her piece bag always at hand, she kept her fingers busy, piecing quilt blocks, while Patty sat beside her making a dress for me. I thanked my lucky stars that I was just a little country cousin and could knock about with Patty. The other dolls were carefully packed away in the cupboard under the seats, lest their fragile faces and beautiful dresses should be damaged by the roughness of the trip, while here I was, out in full view of the world and able to take in everything. When it rained and things were dull for Tommy and Jimmy, we all played at hide the thimble. The palace car was too small to really hide it, so we just pretended, and then the others guessed. That way Grandma could play too, without ever getting up from bed. Sometimes Patty took me over to the Donner wagons, and all the little girls played with their dolls. Mrs. Donner was an artist, and she let us look at her sketchbook, where she had pressed the flowers we found along the way and had drawn pretty pictures of them. She told us that's what it meant to botanize. On dry nights, we had a campfire and sat around it visiting until bedtime. Mr. Reed wrote down the record of each day's progress in a little book he kept in his vest pocket, and from that he could tell how far we were along the way. It was the evening of May 10th, as I remember, that he told us, "Tomorrow we'll be camping at the outskirts of Independence." Independence? Is the last town on the frontier, isn't it, Papa? Asked Puss. Yes, and I've been thinking. I'd see about arranging for 2 or 3 more wagon loads and provisions when we get there. It'll be better to have too much than too little when we're out on the prairie. California is a mighty long ways away. I'd like to buy some sunbonnets for the girls and myself if we have a chance. The ones we brought won't be much for protection, I'm afraid, said Mrs. Reed. The clouds of small buzzing wings that hovered over us soon drove all the folks back to the wagons for the night. Dolly, you're lucky that your face is made of wood, and the pesky skeeters can't bite you, said Patty, as the hand that held me came up with a jerk to drive one of the whirring insects away from her ear. So I was looking on page 29. It shows the wagon train, and the caption is, Day after day, for almost a month, we plodded down the muddy roads of Illinois. So in this chapter, they're going from Springfield to Independence, which sounds like it's like the last big town until they are kind of out in the prairie and don't really have any place to stop and get more provisions. So Patty's dad wants to get a couple more wagons, make sure they have enough. Independence is in Missouri. You can go to that map on the first page, and you can see where they started in Springfield, and then where Independence is. And then you can see how much farther they have to go. So they went far because they've been traveling for a month, but they have a heck of a lot more to go, don't they? So if that's the last place where they get provisions, I can kind of see where Patty's dad is coming from, where he wants to get more, because yeah, they're definitely going to need a lot. A couple things too. The Donners, Mrs. Donner, she's an artist, and they're kind of recording the flowers they find. She's pressing them, which means she's taking the flowers and like putting them in between the pages of a book, and then smashing them down, and they get dried and smashed down that way. And then she's drawing pictures of them. That might be something you could do with your boredom. Try to draw like scientific drawings of some of the flowers, or you could do it with leaves, or even like I always do it when I find a 4-leaf clover. I do that. And then it also says that Patty's dad is writing down details from their journey every day. And that's kind of that picture, I think, is him writing down what they're doing every day. So, yeah. I hope you guys are enjoying the book so far. It's kind of like a bit of a history lesson right now, but it gets to have a little bit more action. So